ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today we're talking about the return of a legend. This is the Razer Diamondback 2015. So this one's quite interesting because the original Diamondback came out back in 2004, I believe. And so a lot of people were, hoping this would be really good. But yeah, there's been some mixed feelings about it, so let's dive right in and see what some of those might be. So key specs wise, it looks pretty promising. It has an ambidextrous design. It's coming with a 16,000 DPI 5G laser sensor, 1000 Hz polling rate, and a braided USB cable. Now looks wise, you'll notice that this is an RGB gaming mouse. And also that it has an interesting design, we'll put it that way. It's very long and very slim. So that means it's going to be only for sort of specific grip types, but also for specific hands. It feels really weird at first when you're first starting to use it. It took me a while to get used to it, that's for sure. But once you do, then it's okay. Now the RGB lighting is absolutely fantastic. This is some of the best RGB lighting I have ever seen on a gaming mouse. Just the way it looks, the color reproduction, everything. It's just fantastic. I really like it. So good job there, Razer. The RGB lighting is really nice. And looks wise, yeah, I mean it is quite basic, but I actually kind of like it. I think looks wise this is a different looking gaming mouse. But I do quite like it, so yeah, I think it does quite good in the looks department. However, looks don't count for that much, so what about comfort? Now this certainly suits larger hands, and I have large hands, so that's good. But if you have smaller hands, then yeah, it's pretty long, so it might feel a little bit uncomfortable there. It is nice and light, coming in at 89 grams, which is good. And it's reasonably comfortable for an ambidextrous design. So I use this for hours upon hours of gaming, and it felt pretty good for the most part. I wasn't getting any wrist troubles, and I have really bad wrists, so that says something. However, it lacks any sort of support on the side of the mouse, and that's definitely an issue. The sides kind of suck in a little bit, but it's hard to describe. It just doesn't feel that nice to grip on the side. So although it feels comfortable on top, the sides feel a bit off, and then it just doesn't feel overall that comfortable because of that reason. So I would say it's only okay in terms of comfort. I'd probably give it something like a 6 out of 10 in terms of comfort. Now accuracy and sensitivity, we're talking about the performance of this sensor. So the 16,000 DPI 5G sensor was actually pretty good, but 16,000 DPI is ridiculous. I mean, unless you're going to be using like a 50-inch 8K display, that you're like, wow, I really need that really high DPI to scroll across the screen. It's just not going to be practical, and no one would ever use it. So yeah, it's just pretty ridiculous. However, that doesn't mean it's bad, and this is one of the first sensors that's ever taken me, taken time for me to get used to. It just, at first I really didn't like it. I was missing things. I had to dial in a heap of adjustment on it in Razer's software to get it just right. But once I did, I thought it was pretty good actually, and it did a pretty good job. So, I'd say it gets probably about a 7 out of 10. Like, it does a good job, especially for a laser sensor as well. But it does take time, and you will need to adjust it quite a bit. Although, being that there's so much DPI, you'll never run out of adjustment there, and there's a lot of adjustment in the acceleration as well. So you will be able to dial in just right. But yeah, it does take a little bit of time. Now, buttons in the scroll wheel, and this is where it really, really falls down. So the right and left click buttons are pretty good. They have a nice amount of click to them and a decent amount of travel. The problem is I found that double clicking didn't seem to work sometimes. You go to double click something and it just wouldn't work. Or it wouldn't be as responsive as you want, and just the right and left click weren't really as good as I would want it to be. They didn't give me the feel and the response that I really wanted out of it. It doesn't end there, because the scroll wheel, it just feels cheap, and it just feels a bit on the flimsy side. It just doesn't feel really that good. It's definitely not the worst one I've used, but it's not that good either. So the scroll wheel is also a disappointment, but the biggest disappointment of all is the fact that it has these two buttons on each side. So that's your normal forward and back buttons that you would normally have on most gaming mice will have them. The problem is the placement is terrible. They're sort of like smack bang in the middle, which you'd think, oh, well, that's not too bad. The problem is, because it's an ambidextrous design and having these on both sides, you often won't particularly hit them that often with your side. You know, I'm right-handed, so I wouldn't hit it with my thumb on the left-hand side. However, the right-hand side, I was constantly hitting them with my fingers. It's really, really annoying. And even to use them with your thumb, the placement just feels so off for some reason. I don't know if it's something to do with the rest of the design, but the buttons just feel off. And I really, really didn't like it. So that's probably the biggest letdown with this whole gaming mouse, was the button placement was just terrible. And, you know, they really should have tested this more and known about this being an issue. It's always going to be a problem when designing an ambidextrous mouse. It always is going to be a bit more difficult for that reason. But still, other ones I've tested in the past haven't had this same problem to the degree that the Diamondback does, that's for sure. Now, as far as additional features go, it comes with the Razer software, which I don't particularly like because it always seems to need a million updates. But I do quite like, in the sense that they've continued to make it better and better. I really like the software. There's a load of customization. You can go crazy with the lighting, with a whole bunch of different lighting modes, which are fun, you know, if you really want to be using them on a gaming mouse. And of course the RGB color spectrum is really, really good too. And you can dial in all the performance exactly how you like. And another feature I quite like is that you can dial it into what mouse pad you are using. Of course I'm using the Razer Goliath control, so I could dial it in for that too. So that was quite nice as well. And overall I think it's sometimes an annoying software because of the updates, but it is quite good to use. Definitely better than many of the other ones out there. Which brings us to the conclusion, and what do I, you know, make of the Razer Diamondback 2015? So I think it has really nice lighting, and I do actually quite like the looks of it. I think it is quite a good looking mouse. It does have quite a weird design though, so in terms of comfort, so you got to be aware of that. It's definitely going to suit people with bigger hands more, at least that's what I think. So yeah, if you're smaller hand, just watch out for that. It has a decent but pretty overkill sensor in it. They didn't really need to go that high with the DPI for whatever reason, but you know, it's there if you really want to turn it up to 16,000 DPI. For reference, I was using it at my standard 2,500. The buttons and the button placement is just terrible though. The right and left click were okay, but the rest of it was just a disaster. So yeah, Razer really needs to figure that out. And honestly, the price this is coming in at right now, so these are on special at Playtech for 139 New Zealand dollars. Now I don't know what it will be where you live, but that is just way, way too expensive. And I have been looking around different sites, and a lot of the Americans also agree that it is just too expensive, even in the United States. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. It is way, way too expensive for what it is. So at its current price, right now at $139, I definitely wouldn't recommend it for sure. If it was to come down to say under $100, maybe New Zealand $90 or something like that, then I would start recommending it. But you're going to have a pretty wicked special. The price is going to have to drop quite far for that to be really, you know, like happen in the real world. But yeah, right now, way too expensive for something that only really I would give maybe a 6 out of 10 or maybe a 7 out of 10 because if you really like RGB lighting, because it is that good. But yeah, overall, not that good, Razer. You really should have stepped it up a bit more with this gaming mouse. Now I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already, and like the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.